Hello, and welcome back to Play of the Game, the limited podcast where we actually play the games. Just as a reminder for everyone who might be new, like we do at the top of every episode, this is a gameplay podcast where every episode we talk about exactly one gameplay decision in a game of limited Magic. And we're going to link out to, usually it's a 17 lands log, that's true this time, and our recommendation, especially if you're listening to this in audio form, is to go click on that link, go see the spot that we're going to be talking about for the whole episode, kind of download it in your mind, keep it as context, and follow along throughout the episode, kind of knowing the specific decision that we're talking about. So that out of the way, let us get into it. This is going to be another spot from the Limited Championship qualifier I was playing a couple weekends ago. I played a lot of Magic over the course of this weekend. A lot of best of one draft. High stakes draft is awesome. High stakes best of one, a little bit less awesome. But there were a lot of really interesting games, and I just wanted to take out a lot of those spots for you. So
I'm glad. Let's just say I'm glad that you were able to enjoy it, so that I did not have to stomach it.
Understandable.
In terms of finding limited gameplay spots.
Yes. And actually, I am realizing one thing that is a little bit wonky about our presentation setup here, so I'm going to need to adjust that. But while I do, Jason, can you talk about this spot? Basically, there's a card off screen. I'm just going to be adjusting the window to figure out how to get that card on screen.
Yeah. Okay, so we are playing a blue-white Merfolk deck. This is our turn 4. We are on the draw against a black-green Elves deck. We have just drawn a card and played our land for turn. We have 2 plains, 2 islands in play. Our opponent has 2 swamps, 2 forests. Our board has 2 of the 2/2s that when they become tapped, they gain 2 life each. Wanderbrine Preacher, I believe is what it's called. Our opponent has a 4/2 Dawn's Light Archer that they played on turn 3. And a Gathering Stone naming presumably Elf. It doesn't exactly show, but I assume it's Elf. They played on their turn 4. With which they binned a swamp with the ETB trigger. So they haven't drawn a card off of it yet, but they're going to have that engine going as the game continues. Life totals are pretty high because this is very early in the game. We are at 22 to our opponent's 18. We had gotten like 1 attack in with our Wanderbrine Preacher on turn 2. So now on turn 4, they have 4 cards in hand. We have 5 cards in hand after playing our land. Our 5 cards are a 5th land, an island, a Shore Lurker, that's the 4-mana 3/3 flyer ETB Surveil 1 Merfolk, and we have 3 different Convoke spells. 2 of which we can cast right now. There we have Harmonized Crescendo, that's the choose a creature type, then draw equal to the number of that creature type. Probably we'd be choosing Merfolk at some point to draw equal to the number of Merfolk we have. It costs 4 blue with Convoke. And we can also cast our Sun-Dappled Celebrant. That's the 6-mana 5/6 with Convoke. 4 white. It has Vigilance. And finally, the one uncastable spell in our hand, Wanderbrine Farewell. That's the thing that bounces 2 non-land permanents and makes 2 Merfolk as long as you control a Merfolk. And given that we have 2 Merfolk in play right now and might put a 3rd into play, it's probably pretty likely that we'll have a Merfolk. So it's going to be pretty hard for us not to. So yeah, the question is, we have 3 choices here. Playing Shore Lurker, playing Sun-Dappled Celebrant, and playing Harmonized Crescendo. And on top of that, if we play Shore Lurker, obviously we'll have the Surveil decision, but we can also then choose whether or not we want to attack. Presumably we'd want to attack before playing the Shore Lurker to conceal information, because, if they know we have a 3/3 flyer, they might not. They're probably less willing to trade off their 4/2 reach creature. But on the other hand, maybe like we could get some information about what our top card is to determine whether we want to attack. I think we'd probably want to attack in those cases, though. So, that's basically the decision we're facing here. Cast Harmonized Crescendo, cast Shore Lurker, and probably attack. Cast Sun-Dappled Celebrant. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it is pretty possible, and I think a good framing to kind of branch off the three possibilities into the card we're casting this turn. Within each of those possibilities, there are some choices that we could make. I guess mainly there are choices being made in the Shore Lurker version. So,
Yeah, I guess we could wait. We probably would wait to cast Harmonized Crescendo until their turn. It's not free to do so because they could respond to it with a removal spell,
yeah,
but it would also let us block if they attacked, if we wanted to trade, and also conceal a little bit what we're doing.
yep. So, I think let's probably talk about Crescendo first because I think to me that one is the easiest to dismiss, and I think if you're in a game of Magic and kind of processing the situation as it happens, this is the right way to think about it, is like, which decisions can I immediately say I'm not doing that, so let me move on and think about other things. So what does casting this Crescendo do here? It draws us 2 cards, assuming that they don't have a removal spell, which we're going to assume. It gains us 4 life, and
I mean,
the
all
game
our
kind
options
of
gain us 4 life.
this is true. Yes. And the game kind of continues from there. Basically, we're using it as relatively expensive divination. Notable is that we have this card called Wanderwine Farewell that makes 2 more Merfolk, which seems...
And also we have
the Shore Lurker
we have
as
a Shore
well.
Lurker, which is also a Merfolk.
Right. So we have many other ways to put more Merfolk on the battlefield. Harmonized Crescendo, as a card, generally speaking, wants you to have lots of one creature type on the battlefield. That is the way it's costed. 6 mana with Convoke is a pretty hefty cost, and you're really not getting very much value out of it if you use it to just draw 2. And we have a couple good other alternatives. We can play a 5/6, or we can play another Merfolk that surveils us and maybe attacks in the air or something. So I think it's pretty easy to dismiss Crescendo. And if anyone has any reasons why we maybe should consider that, feel free to leave them in the comments. I think for us right now, this is one I'm happy moving on from. Any objections?
I will mention one thing just because it's funny. It's not relevant, but it's funny. Did you note that Sundappled Celebrant and the 2 preachers are all clerics? So you
That
could,
is very funny.
if you wanted to cast it next turn, you could cast the Treefolk this turn and then name Cleric next turn.
That's a good one. That's a very good one. I have had a deck where I named Cleric off of Gathering Stone to bridge that synergy, which is very funny. But yeah, not super relevant. We're dismissing the possibility of casting Crescendo. Okay, so now we are left with, do we cast Shore Lurker or do we cast Sundappled Celebrant? The Celebrant one is easier to talk about, like how we would actually go about doing that, right? We would tap out, we would cast it, that's it. So
yep.
Understanding the value of that, I think, is pretty obvious, right? Getting the 5/6 into play matters a lot. It's a very big body. The 4/2 can't really interact profitably with it. Even if they play another medium-sized creature, say a Dawnhand Eulogist, for example, that also can't really double block, right, with their 4/2. Would be kind of a 2-for-1 on our side. And it sort of uses the most mana, assuming that we're not casting this Crescendo, because it's 6 mana. I mean, you count Convoke, but if you're not tapping your creatures now, you're tapping them later, and that is still a cost. So we are kind of using the most mana from our hand. That, I would say, is a pretty strong default play. It's also notable, I think, that we could cast Crescendo for 3 next turn if something weird happens, and that might be good.
I mean, we could also cast Crescendo for 3 if we cast the Shore Lurker.
Yes, this is also true. Yeah. Although, creature with vigilance, whatever, there's little nuance there. But however, if we cast Celebrant, we are giving up the opportunity to attack. And that could be relevant here, given that our opponent has cast a Gathering Stone, which is a very strong engine piece that will draw them a couple cards and kind of let them surveil every turn over the course of the game. And I would say that given the presence of this Gathering Stone, our plan is probably to be the aggro a little bit. I mean, you could think about maybe this Crescendo just outcards the Gathering Stone, and so we actually do want to be the control here. But generally, I think the plan for us is to be pressuring them a little bit more, because we seem to be in a position to do that this game, unless they untap and cast 2 very good statted elves or something off of their mana discount from the stone. And then the question is, right, do we value using the mana, like using our turn of creature taps on the Sun-Dappled Celebrant, kind of getting that out of the way right now? Or do we value more the opportunity to attack with the creatures this turn and force them either to trade their 4/2 for our 2/2, which might not be a super profitable trade, or just take 4 and we gain 4 and we're kind of pulling very far ahead on life? So yeah, how would you be thinking about that? Like, where are your instincts going? Which line should we talk about first?
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out like the best way to go about talking to this because I kind of want to build to something, which I think like is the thing that like makes me want to, um, okay, so first of all, one thing to think about is like how happy are we with the trade? Like if they do decide to trade,
Yes.
like
I
would
think
they
this is a
decide to
very
trade?
relevant question. Because we are trying to build towards 2 large Convoke spells. And so
Yeah.
both, like, one of those spells cares about us having Merfolk on the battlefield for, like, how many cards we draw. The other one cares just minimum 1, but, like, that's fine. But, like, having creatures on the battlefield actually matters for us, especially if they're Merfolk. It's full cards that we're drawing later in the game, which really does matter. It's also true that, like, this Wanderwine Farewell is going to bounce 2 of their creatures at some point, and that might actually like be better if we can bounce 2 things next turn, whereas if they trade off and then play 1 thing, we're kind of maybe not getting full value from it, although there's this Gathering Stone that looks pretty
Yeah, I
bounceable.
think
So
that's
that's I think pretty easy to dismiss.
well, it makes not trading still let us like push through more, like push through easier. Like even in the scenario where we don't trade, the 4/2 is not likely to be on the board next turn. Okay, so actually, here's where I want to start. I want to start with what our plan is next turn, right? Because and I think this is a really important thing to think about because okay, we're building towards casting this crescendo, and we want to cast the crescendo after we cast the farewell, pretty clearly, right? Like, we don't really want to do it before we like put these extra tumor folk into play, and also casting the farewell buys us time to draw cards and then use those cards, right?
Yep.
So like that is probably the order in which we want to cast those spells.
Agreed on
So
all
we
counts.
probably want to cast this farewell pretty soon, right? Like I don't want to like be like, oh, just cast this like across the next 2 turns, just cast Shore Lurker and Celebrant. I think we can do better than that. I think we can like push forward our plan a little better than that. Given that, like, I'm pretty inclined to want to cast the farewell next turn exactly, right?
Agreed.
So like,
And then probably the
and
crescendo the turn after that. Probably.
yeah, yes. Obviously we could draw things before then that would change our decision, but it's going to be pretty hard for them to prevent us from casting the farewell. I guess if we like attacked, they traded, we cast our Shore Lurker, and then they cast a removal spell, then we couldn't cast the farewell the next turn, but we could like cast a Celebrant and then cast the farewell the next turn. But like, one thing to note is like theoretically attacking and then playing Shore Lurker does make it like slightly harder to cast farewell, but I'm not too worried about that. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yep.
More to the point, I think the fact that we are casting farewell next turn, or like we are planning on casting farewell next turn, assuming nothing weird happens, that makes me more excited to have a 5/6 in play. Is I guess what I'm saying, right?
5/6s are very good on small boards, especially 5/6 vigilances. They kind of
Yeah.
mean that it's impossible for your opponent to engage in combat profitably. And we
Yeah,
are
like,
planning to make the board quite small, and it's going to be hard for the opponent to have a big board without our say for like a couple more turns.
Yeah. Notably, the fact that we are casting farewell the next turn makes it one worse for us to trade, I believe, because like of the thing you mentioned of like it's gonna matter less that this 4/2 is on the board. We can like probably attack past it one turn anyways with our 2/2s, and 2 makes me more want to like play this 5/6 like. If you imagine like, oh, playing this 3/3 lets us get in like more damage this turn, while playing the 5/6 lets us get in more damage next turn, which like kind of balances out, right?
Yep, totally agreed. So yeah, I think lean towards playing the 5/6. I mean, the one notable downside to playing that versus the Shore Lurker is right. Like, let's say we play Shore Lurker, maybe we even don't attack, or maybe we attack and they don't trade, and then we play Farewell next turn. The following turn, we do have an extra Merfolk in play, so we get to draw an additional card off of our Crescendo.
So here's the thing, and here's the final kicker that I've been building up to. Do we actually lose out on having an extra Merfolk in play if we play our Sundapple Celebrant? Because the answer might surprise you. It's kind of no. So this is where you need to think a couple turns ahead again, right? So on the turn where we cast Harmonized Crescendo, which we believe is like 2 turns from now, not this turn, not next turn, but the turn after, right?
Yeah.
What will our board look like? Well, we're gonna have at least our 5 lands in play. Let's say we don't draw a land, so we only have 5 lands in play. We have our 2 preachers. Okay. Let's say we took the line where we cast Celebrant, right? We'll have our 2 preachers. We'll have our Celebrant, and we'll have 2 Merfolk in play, right? So if you add up all of that, that is 10 mana, right? Counting Convoke. Notably, 4 plus 6 is 10. So we could cast both the Shore Lurker and the Harmonized Crescendo on that turn.
This is true. I mean, we will be foregoing the opportunity to attack, which may be pretty important given that our opponent has a Gathering Stone and can deploy, and so we kind of want to be putting pressure on them. Yes, we definitely can, and that's pretty good. And it's also just relevant to kind of figure out that, like, our 1/1s probably won't attack because there will be at least a 4/2 on the board, and our 2/2s pretty unlikely to be able to attack as well because, like, the opponent playing a creature with 3 or more toughness seems pretty likely over the next 2 turns. So I think even though you think like, oh, we're going to have a pretty wide board, don't we want to like attack with a lot of things? The answer is, well, maybe we're only going to be able to attack with the 5/6 at that point. I think that's a pretty realistic assumption to make. And we can still attack with it because it has Vigilance, that oh so nice keyword with Convoke. On that turn.
Also notably, playing Shore Lurker plus Harmonized Crescendo, the Shore Lurker also contributes 1 if you play it first, which you will.
Yes.
So like
we will have 1 extra
like,
mana, right?
Yeah.
So and also actually, really notably, like this does matter because we are spending the Convoke mana this turn to cast the Celebrant. Whereas if we had not cast the Celebrant, cast the Shore Lurker instead, you can't do the same double deploying. Yeah,
you couldn't cast both Celebrant and Harmonized Crescendo without like drawing another land and like tapping all your creatures, right? So if you cast Shore Lurker this turn and then Farewell the next turn, then you'll have 5 creatures in play, 5 lands in play. That's only 10. Notably, playing Celebrant into Crescendo costs you 11 mana, not 10 mana of Convoke, right? So you would have to have drawn another land in addition to that, which you're not guaranteed to do. You're probably not topping a land with this Shore Lurker if you can help it, given that like Crescendo will draw you into infinite land. So like, why would you? So in fact, it is relevantly better mana expenditure to cast your Sundapple Celebrant, assuming you care about having the Celebrant in play. Like maybe you could say, okay, I don't care about having the Celebrant in play at all. So like, I can probably spend that mana on that turn casting more Merfolk and drawing more cards if you draw more Merfolk. But I think I value the Celebrant in play more than drawing my 6th card almost.
I mean, it's limited. We care about a 5/6 Vigilance almost always in limited. It's really hard to make the argument that we don't care about that at all. So I think it's sort of weird. Like, it's a pretty complicated decision to talk through all of the combinations of, like, how exactly we sequence over the next few turns. But it ends up in a pretty neat little package where we can actually think through it and figure out there's a line here that, with the contents of our current hand, makes a very real amount of sense. It is pretty hard for the opponent to meaningfully punish us if we take this line. It has pretty notable properties that are better than other lines that we could take. I mean, maybe we should have talked about for a little bit longer, like, do we actually want to make the attack if we play the Shore Lurker? Because if we're kind of thinking through that line, it becomes relevant. Like, are we actually attacking? Do we actually get value out of doing that? That kind of thing.
We are.
I would say we probably are, and on balance, we're probably going to want to do that. It's at least somewhat of an interesting decision, especially with the Crescendo in hand. But I basically come down in the same boat. I agree. I think casting the Sundappled Celebrant for pretty nuanced and difficult to see reasons, but like pretty meaningful reasons, is like a notably better play here than playing the Shore Lurker, even though we are sort of building towards large board of Merfolk for our crescendo.
Yeah, I think the key thing is just like looking like 1 and 2 turns ahead to see like, we're casting this, we're casting this Wanderwine Farewell next turn, and therefore like the 5/6 is gonna do like the 5/6 is gonna do just as well in terms of damage as like a 3/3 plus attacking this turn, and B, we're gonna cast Crescendo in a couple turns. And that means that like we actually do want to be spending all of our Convoke mana to build up to that.
And I do think there's kind of a little bit of an interesting property here of Wanderwine Farewell as a card bouncing like non-land permanents does sort of let us plan 2 turns ahead in a much cleaner way in some ways, because whatever they're spending their mana on will bounce the best stuff, and we can probably be ahead on board. It's a very clean, like, you don't have to be doing combat math with unknown variables in it as much, because you're kind of just saying, if they play better stuff than this, we'll bounce that, and if they play worse stuff than this, then we don't really care. So yeah, I think that this is one of the spots maybe you can identify of like, I actually can afford to think 2 distinct turns ahead in the game, because I have the cards in my hand to control that the game 2 turns from now will look very similar regardless of how things play out, because of like the way I'm sequencing.
Yeah. Also on top of that, like, your life total is not under threat, so you don't really need to worry about like what your opponent's doing in terms of like attacking you.
Right. Exactly. So
to be fair, if they were attacking you, you probably would want the 5/6 even more.
True. Right. Yeah. So to check a little bit on what I did here, I played the 5/6. This is a surprise. Most episodes I pick a spot where I messed up in some way. This time, no, I took the right line. And then next turn we cast the Farewell, I believe. I think we attacked first, which
I
made
think
it a
you're
little
supposed
bit
to attack second. But...
Yeah, because this Blight Rot made things a little bit complicated. They got to eat our thing, and then we bounced stuff, and that was a little bit bad. But I believe, if I remember correctly, we ended up winning this game pretty handily just from this like huge crescendo, which was very fun.
Yes.
Yeah. So nice little spot, nice little game, kind of easy package to sort of analyze in. Cool. We can wrap it up there. So thanks everyone for listening. You can find me at Ryan C MTG or over at Blue Sky at r-condon.bsky.social. And Jason?
You can find me basically everywhere at JasonILTG, and you can subscribe to this one's Patreon.
I gotta figure out a way to like end this where I don't give you that opportunity every time. We'll figure it out. Anyway, thank you. I know that's probably why you do it. All right. Thank you everyone for listening. Really appreciate it. This has been fun. And until next time, go out and make some good plays.
Hey.